I've been having these weird thoughts lately. Like, are all of these games important? Or not? Kingdom Hearts Recoded technically isn't one of the important games, and I would guess a lot of you are probably more familiar with this one due to its inclusion in the collections as cutscenes or a movie. But what about the actual game itself? I will venture out and say that Recoded is actually kinda awesome. It's another command deck game, just like Birth by Sleep or Dream Drop Distance. I'll even go as far as to say it is the best of the command deck games. Uh, no, just me? Okay, maybe not. But if I had it my way, this would have gotten a proper remake. Remake? Along with Days, of course. Anyways, this game is just full of features that I've wanted to see make a return in a mainline game. Don't believe me? Here's why I feel Kingdom Hearts Recoded is the best worst game in the series. And I guess I'll start with the negatives first. So what exactly sucks about Recoded, or makes it the worst? Let's just get the most glaring flaw out of the way. The story. The story kinda sucks. Mainly, it's just boring. For those unaware, Recoded is the remake, for remake, of the Japan exclusive episodic mobile phone game, Kingdom Hearts Coded. And with that said, it does feel pretty obvious that it was designed and padded out for that sort of elongated format, as it just drags. Even when you're only having to watch the cutscenes, it feels so long. Like the first time I watched the cutscenes in the collection, I was just like, I don't remember this being this long. Like it just kind of goes on and on. And you'll be sitting there doing your best, trying to pay attention as it goes in and out of that weird, sometimes memey Kingdom Hearts territory. There is mystery, there is intrigue, and there's even a little bit of charm in some of the dialogue, but only in hindsight do you realize, a lot of that wasn't very important. In my personal opinion, I consider the story to be hot garbage until like literally the last 15 minutes. And this is coming from someone who's a fan of these games. If Kingdom Hearts is an anime, then the story for Coded is literally a filler arc. Now, the story does have some plot significance, filling us in on the final scenes of Kingdom Hearts 2, and some elements of it have been recontextualized, mainly the datascape. Datascape? Datascape. So it isn't completely pointless, just mostly pointless. There is also quite a bit of platforming in this one, which I know is not everyone's favorite aspect of Kingdom Hearts. You can't really avoid it here. It also introduces some new types of gameplay for certain worlds and boss fights, and this is what I think this game is most known for aside from the blocks. And I'll admit, the quality of all these segments isn't always there, but I still appreciate the attempts at some unique scenarios rather than just having kept everything completely the same, especially since we are revisiting those Kingdom Hearts 1 worlds again. But that's enough of that. It's time to get into what's really important here. Why Recoded is great. The story isn't what's important here. The combat is what's important here. And the first thing that really stands out is the flow and pacing. It feels good and is still mostly responsive. These are the same developers as Days, which personally I don't think was all that great whenever it came to how it actually played, but they really stepped things up with this one. It's almost like they were able to emulate the flow of the first game, but then were able to inject it with some of the speed and the snap of Kingdom Hearts 2. It really does feel like a hybrid, and with some of the abilities they give you, you'll be dealing out hits just as fast as Kingdom Hearts 2. And what's great is that the surrounding game mechanics, the clock gauge, command leveling, and even Keyblades themselves revolve around you staying engaged in combat, which thankfully they nailed for the most part. Now, I will admit, this was my first command deck game, so I don't really have that nostalgia for Birth by Sleep, so I know I probably sound a little biased. And I get this game is not as overtly flashy, but I do genuinely feel like how the commands themselves work, how they can link and flow in and out of combat is just it's a bit better in this game. Also, more of the commands feel viable, which was something that I kind of struggled with in Birth by Sleep. It didn't really feel like I felt like commands in Birth by Sleep sometimes felt unreliable, and certain ones kind of rose to the top, and it felt like you had to really stick to certain commands in order to be successful after a certain point. I definitely felt like I could experiment a little bit more and actually take advantage of different commands in this game. And it's just an overall more consistent experience, in my opinion. Also, there are some pretty cool finishers to make up for some of the flashiness, and I really like that they added like different ones rather than just like the usual suspects. Some of them are a little bit gimmicky, but considering it's a DS game, they really could have gone all out on the gimmicks, but thankfully they didn't, which I really appreciated here. Also, command melding does return in this game, and it's actually not too annoying. In this game, you have command group slots now, so you can place up to 2 commands into one spot, letting you preview the conversion or even just use it right away. What I love is that it straight up highlights what commands that are relevant for your combinations, taking out a lot of the guesswork or a trial and error or the feeling of having to rely on RNG to get certain results. Overall, it's way more straightforward. If we ever get another command deck game with melding, hopefully this is what they base it on. And now, one of my favorite things about this game are the Keyblades. More importantly, that we have Keyblades that level up. This predates Union Cross and Kingdom Hearts 3. What they did was essentially mix the command styles from Birth by Sleep into the Keyblades themselves. This makes it so you have way more incentive to actually want to use different Keyblades for different playstyles. This actually makes the Keyblades way more situational as to achieve certain goals you might actually need a different Keyblade out, or it might make certain encounters a little easier. So you have a clock gauge that will fill up when landing hits on enemies or blocks, and the Keyblades start to progressively activate abilities based on your level of gauge. So you'll start at level 1 and make your way up to a max 4th level. And these are like not insignificant abilities. A lot of them can be really helpful, so much so that like the Keyblades themselves are not even defined by stats in this game, but rather by what benefits they may offer you. Each Keyblade has different abilities per clock level, and you'll unlock more as the Keyblade itself levels up through use. And then you're able to select which abilities are going to be active while you're using it. And this, it really brings that focus back to the gameplay as to actually take advantage of these perks, and they require you to stay in the action. Otherwise, the gauge will begin to deplete. And I think this was such a nice take on Keyblades. I know Kingdom Hearts 3, it tried something similar with upgrading Keyblades by using materials, but this to me was just, it's still so much better. And if we ever get more upgradable Keyblades, hopefully they take a note from this. Another standout aspect of this game, for me, is its theming. Just that idea that we're tinkering with a computer, messing with data world, a data Sora, and exploring code. And what really pulls it all together is the stat matrix. This is how you level up data Sora, and it's another modular take. It does give off slight vibes of the leveling system from Days, where you had stat panels that you had to slot into your little grid, but not nearly as granular or annoying. This, again, I think was a much better take. Here you have the stat chips that you're installing onto a circuit board, and we're filling out spaces around CPUs that unlock by completing the different worlds in the game. There are a lot of different stat chips to work with too. Like there's one for whenever you level up, there's ones that increase your defense, HP, magic, and even ones that boost your cures and other specific types of magic. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about how many casts of magic we can have with us. It does still have a little bit of that puzzle element. Like you're trying to organize your stat chips and figuring out the most efficient way to boost exactly what you want. Filling out more of the board is also how you unlock those more familiar abilities, more command slots, and item slots. And you'll also unlock these things called cheat tuners, which I'll talk more on later, but basically they kind of let you tweak or rig the game in your favor, as it puts it. But the main point for the stat matrix is that it's another example of a Kingdom Hearts game giving you more control over leveling up, and I like it. It's nice. Even just for the music alone, like I didn't realize how well I remembered this song and how ingrained in my head it was until revisiting this game. It kind of slaps. And continuing on with the theming, the data worlds that we're visiting are corrupted by glitches, and we have to travel through backdoors into the code of the world to fix the issues. And this is how we get into what are called the system sectors. Now, these are where a lot of the combat will take place, and they're essentially like a dungeon crawling section, which honestly I kind of like for a Kingdom Hearts game. Think like the Cavern of Remembrance from Kingdom Hearts 2, but a little more amped up. So you'll be going through, clearing various rooms and floors of like stronger glitched Heartless in order to reveal an exit. They even have their own currency called sector points, which you get through battling or wagering them in floor challenges. You can then spend these points when you exit to purchase special items, commands, finishers, or even stat chips. There are even multiple system sectors per world, so they are something you'll become pretty familiar with throughout the game. But I do think they're a good concept because, again, they do help to reinforce the strengths of the combat, help level up your Keyblades, and leveling up your commands. Later on, some of the challenges and room designs can border on being a little cruel, but they are meant to test your ability and sometimes test your patience, but usually do shake up how you're actually playing the game. Overall, I do think that they're good, and I think bringing back some form of additional dungeon mechanic for another game, at least as like an extra thing, I think would be great. And speaking of other things I'd want to see in more of these games, which honestly I think is just going to be the theme for this video, but the customization in this game provided by those cheat tuners I mentioned before. And these let you tweak certain values in the game, sort of like you're cheating. With example, the first one, the difficulty cheat, which literally just lets you adjust the difficulty whenever you want. Like you don't select the difficulty when you start a new game. It's all controlled here, which I think is really cool. First game in the series that lets you change the difficulty after the fact, and it was on a handheld. There are other cheats as well, such as one that lets you have higher loot chance in exchange for health. There's one for getting more prizes in exchange for making enemies stronger. There's even one for just flat out setting how much health Sora and enemies will have. So you can use these in combination to basically make the game as challenging as you want, make grinding commands a little easier, or even attempt to cheese certain enemies or complete certain goals. And it's hard not to love seeing this sort of player choice and making it fit into the theme of the game so well. That player choice actually leads pretty nicely into my next point, which would be the replayability of this game. There's quite a bit to keep you coming back. There's side quests, there's trophies, there's scoreboards, there's multiple system sectors with extra rewards, and even replayable boss sections, which is another thing I want to see more of in Kingdom Hearts. There's also grinding to fill out the stat matrix, and lots of commands to meld and level up. So there is a decent amount here to keep you busy. I feel like Recoded often gets dismissed entirely because of its story, and unfortunately, it has all the makings of being completely forgettable. Lackluster story, unique gameplay, and platforming. If you've only been exposed to the cutscenes, I wouldn't blame you for thinking this game was a skip. But in spite of all of that, it still has so many features that I hope we see again, like the upgradable Keyblades, replayable segments, and post-game content. Now I know it's not perfect, and after so many hours of playing it, both on a DS and an emulator, any of its other flaws really stem from it remaining a DS game. The camera especially is pretty annoying to deal with on a DS, and sometimes the game does feel a little too ambitious for its own good, and with the limited DS controls, it doesn't always feel as precise or as fluid as it needs to be, and it can't always keep up with all the action it hopes to show off. Sorry, DS, but we've moved on. But that doesn't stop the game from being a fun time, and it's such a good base for a Kingdom Hearts game. Which is why I consider Recoded to probably be the best worst game, and why it deserves a remake. If you are looking for more Kingdom Hearts to tide you over until the next game, it's definitely worth your time, after you're caught up with the core story of course. I still think it's funny we got all these cool features and what is probably the closest to a spin-off this series has, but I really want to know your thoughts on this one. Is it one that you played yourself? And how does it stack up against the other Command Dick games for you? Also, were there any features from this game you think should make a return? Remember to please give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and maybe subscribe if you're into this Kingdom Hearts nonsense. Anyways, I'll see you in the next video. Bye! Bye bye.